As Nebraska players and coaches speak on Tuesday, one thing is clear. Nobody's chasing Dylan Raiola back.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. Today and every day, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this NFL season, head to FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long.
All right, welcome in. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer, even if you can't see him, from 1620 The Zone, is here with me. It is Wednesday, December 17th. No dancing around the topic of the week from Nebraska offensive coordinator and several Huskers in front of the media on Tuesday in Lincoln. Connor, I'm sure they did have some conversation behind the scenes about the right approach to take in reacting to the news from Monday of Dylan Raiola's plans to transfer. You may have heard the Nebraska quarterback, soon we'll be saying former Nebraska quarterback, plans to enter the portal when it opens on January 2nd. Aside from a quickly deleted Instagram repost of Pete Thamel's tweet, Dylan has not addressed this, but Nebraska is moving forward. It's bowl practice. Dylan's not there. He's clearly made it known to his coaches and his teammates that he's not coming to Nebraska. So instead of acting all weird about this and letting things hang out there somewhat unanswered, Nebraska made the right call and went ahead and just addressed it head on.
Yeah, I think so too. That doesn't surprise me as far as how they sort of approached that from yesterday. I didn't think it was going to be one of those situations where you're just like, yeah, I can't really talk about that right now. Wow, I really do have camera problems today. Maybe I'll just get out the old one. But yeah, I just get the sense that it's kind of a clean break for both sides. And like I said in the cold open there, I don't think anybody's chasing anybody, and I don't think anybody's afraid to say, yep, he's not going to be here anymore, and that's okay. And he's going to be, he'll have a chance to talk about, the end or whatever happened at Nebraska as well, and whatever he wants next. And that's the sense I got from the team. Like, brush your shoulders off. We're on to the next thing.
If you play college football or any sport in college athletics, the portal landscape is not in any way foreign to you. You yourself have considered your options, and you probably do it every single year. So despite Tyler Knaak, and we'll get to him later in this episode, saying that a few of the players were upset around the team on Monday that Dylan was leaving, and that's understandable. He's been a leader on this team, a huge figure on this team, the face of the Nebraska program for 2 seasons. Despite that, mostly it was all, hey, it's next guy up. Even Mekhi Nelson, the running back who came in with Raiola last year and said that he looked up to him, described his attitude as next guy up. And with Dana Holgorsen, it was a straightforward approach. He said that he enjoyed working with Raiola, but Dana said that his job at Nebraska is not finished, and he's moving on with TJ Lateef in the driver's seat at quarterback. So it was very much businesslike in the approach from Nebraska about how to handle this big news. And make no mistake, this is a huge development when someone of the stature of Dylan Raiola goes into the transfer portal. This was the biggest shoe that was potentially going to drop in the month of December, and it did. So Nebraska's picking up the pieces rather smoothly and saying it's time to move on.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that anybody was really bent out of shape about it, at all. So I think that probably tells you about how it went or how it was going and things like that as well. So I was impressed with the way sort of Nebraska, the players kind of handled it yesterday and en route to wherever we're headed here.
And it wasn't like the players were handpicked to come up to the podium who, would not create a headline. You had Dane Key, an outgoing senior who has one game left at Nebraska, and he was close to Raiola, is close to Raiola in that they lived together this year. Dylan was essential in recruiting Key to Nebraska out of the portal himself last season, and Key had it. He said he talked to Dylan on Tuesday, and then Key offered a kind of a word of warning for people, not necessarily to Dylan, but to anyone who goes into the portal, and says, be careful what you wish for. It's a dangerous place. The grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. And I don't know how to read into that, because he just spent a year at Nebraska. And maybe the grass was not greener in the Big Ten than in the SEC as it appeared to him. But, he's got his head held high as he gets ready to play his final game with the Huskers in the Las Vegas Bowl.
Yeah. And maybe this is that was a weird one. Like you said, because that's a player who, did he find out the grass wasn't greener on the other side when he transferred?
Maybe he's just observed that with others.
Yeah, maybe he's just giving out a word of advice to people or something like that. But that was sort of an odd quote. I also want to go back to what you said, what Dana said too. My job's not done here, with conversations about him, putting his name in the ring for other jobs and interviewing for other jobs and stuff like that. I felt like that was sort of a mild tip of the cap to that and all that stuff too.
Yeah, it was, I think, his way of saying, I'm coming back. Yeah. I'm in for 2026 at Nebraska. And just like with players, it's always a possibility. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dana has not definitively said one way or the other whether he wants to be a head coach again. And I think if the right opportunity came around, he would give it a lot of consideration. So as of now, the jobs are filled for the most part in the carousel. That could change in the month of January, but you live day to day in college football. And today in college football, Nebraska, like December 17th going into the 18th, Nebraska is going to the portal to find a quarterback to add to that room, because right now it's TJ Lateef as a returning 3-game starter, 4 games, as long as he makes it back healthy for the bowl game, and Marcos Davila, who is a transfer from Purdue and redshirted this season. Nebraska loses Jalen Granstad. It loses Luke Longvall. So short of the walk-on portion of things, it is a thin room. Huskers will go to the portal regardless. Regardless of what happens, the remainder of this year, when January gets here, as Holgorsen said, it's going to get crazy for a couple of weeks. And I asked Dana if he had any kind of a template in what works as far as teaming a quarterback, an incoming quarterback, with a player like Lateef, who, as I said, has started 3 games. And here's what Dana said about balancing experience with youth, with competition, with everything else that you might look for to make the dynamic right in the QB room next season.
Interesting conversation. It's an interesting question based on the conversations I've been having for 2 days now, and we haven't made those decisions. And I can argue, it'd be good to bring young kids in. I could argue it'd be good to bring an older kid in. I just think you need to look at it, because that position is, competition is very important in that position. What typically happens if you bring too much competition in, when the thing gets resolved, they leave. That's happened in that room when they had to sit. You lose the battle, you leave, and you go transfer, and you got to sit a year. And so, yeah. But because of that rule, I think you'll be able to get guys to come in for a competition perspective when they know they can leave if they don't win the job. There's that aspect of it too. So I just think you evaluate them, you try to find the best fit. Like I said, January 2nd is going to be crazy.
Use the possibility that you can transfer if it doesn't work out as a sales pitch in the recruiting job coming in out of the portal. That's what he suggested there. If you're young and you come in and you lose the job, well, you can go again. You can leave again.
I think that part of it is a tough needle to thread. Like that piece of it of what kind of player are we going to get in terms of age? Like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we aiming for somebody to be the starting quarterback? Are we aiming for somebody to come in and compete? Are we aiming for somebody to come in and be TJ Latif's backup? And some of that is, what's available to you and how it looks out there as far as the market is concerned. What I don't want them to, be wishy-washy about. It's okay if you're wishy-washy about that, because like I said, that's what's available. What I don't want them to be wishy-washy about is the type of player that they want. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying like style of quarterback and what they're actually looking for. I think they have to make a decision on that before they go out and identify the potential suitors that fit that role in the transfer portal, because frankly, it's evaded them over the last couple of years.
I agree completely. And speaking of tough needles to thread, I think that can be tough also, because every day now this week, new quarterbacks go into the portal. And when I see a quarterback go into the portal, I'll use the North Texas quarterback, who's a young guy, Drew Mestemaker, as an example. Threw for more than 3,000 yards this year. Well over 3,000. He may have led the FBS in passing yards. And the first thing I went to look at when I checked his stats were his rushing yards, because I want to know, that's the best way to be able to tell if he's a mobile quarterback. And you can't, it's not the end all be all, because North Texas may have had no interest in running the quarterback, but they were non-existent. Like he did not gain yards on the ground. So my assumption is that he's not he's not a dual threat. And I think you can't be sucked into that if you're Nebraska and just say, well, look, this guy's got great passing numbers, because if your offense is going to go in the direction that you want it to go, and you're going to recruit offensive linemen and other players, offensive line is probably the most important place, but other players who fit into a system that features a dual threat quarterback, or at least a mobile quarterback, you got to make that decision and enter the portal process with that in mind. So I agree, that's super important. And I think it's an easy place to slip up if you're a program that is that's in the market for a QB.
All right, when we come back, we'll touch a little bit more on the Dylan Raiola situation, almost a retrospective yesterday from Dana Holgorsen and others, and we'll continue on here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, word from the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays moving fast. But by the way, now we're turning into NFL Saturdays and Sundays and Thursdays and Mondays and all of those things. So when one big play suddenly happens and everything feels a little bit different, that's what makes live betting so exciting with FanDuel. You could jump in right at the moment that is right for you. Take advantage of those odds that may be in your favor at the moment. Talking everything adjusts as the game goes on. Live spreads, money lines, player props, they all change as the game goes along. So if you're a little bit too late in getting in on the action before the game starts, no need to fear. FanDuel is here for you. Next touchdown scores, whatever drive results, anything in between. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, head to FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. With FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, welcome back. Connor Happerman Sherman with you here on a Wednesday Locked On Nebraska podcast. There you go. We're in the season. I got my camera. I had to ditch the main camera today and go to the backup cam.
We have some technical things going on today. During that last break, I thought for a second that my computer was going to lose power. So
whoa,
we were getting down to like the 1% and it's plugged in. So I think I'm okay. Well, I believe this.
We're not plug and play here. You know, we gotta work on it.
I think this podcast is actually going to be to come to fruition at some point.
I think so. I think that's good. So Dana Holgorsen talked about, he did asked a little bit of, I mean, I'm sure he has way more thoughts on this, about a retrospective sort of Dylan Raiola's time here. And, I think the question from Sean Callahan was basically why didn't it work? Or something along those lines. And
that's a road that Dana didn't want to go down.
Right. It at least not now, at least not like 2 days after the intention of going into the portal comes out. Now Nebraska's got to move on to the next thing, but he said he thought there were times where he thought they were moving in the right direction. And then there were times where it wasn't, which is pretty vague, but also very true.
Yeah. And he said that he thought it was really close to getting over the hump is maybe overstating somewhat, but Holgorsen mentioned the USC game, and that is where I think everyone's mind is going to go when you look at and assess what could have been in the Dylan Raiola time at Nebraska if he had not been hurt. And we've said this, but it's interesting to hear it from the offensive coordinator. Actually, I think Dana has said this over the previous month, but now to say it when the regular season's over, if Dylan had stayed healthy in that game. And some of this is coming from Dana's perspective, where he called the play that caused Dylan to drop back and Nebraska to miss the pass protection assignment, and for Dylan to get sacked for the first time in that game against USC on November 1st and break his leg. And then the season definitely went in a different direction after that point. Holgorsen said if that doesn't happen, he believes Nebraska wins that game. I think everybody believes that Nebraska would have won at UCLA, and who knows where it goes from there. You gain momentum. Dylan might not be transferring if that scenario had unfolded. Nebraska likely would have 8, maybe even 9 wins. So often in these spots where you reach a fork in the road in college football or sports in general, but college football is always seems to be teetering on the edge of something, unless you're Georgia or Ohio State. There is like one moment where it all could have gone a different direction. And it's interesting to hear the offensive coordinator kind of play that out in his mind as Nebraska gets ready for the bowl game and moves forward without Dylan Raiola.
I was sort of, I don't know, fascinated to hear him go in that direction, because maybe they win that game, but I don't know. The way the defense looked against Iowa and Penn State, they ain't winning those games.
I know. But they weren't in it. Like, and this is there's no excuse for this, but for whatever reason, and we've heard this repeatedly now in the post-mortem of this season from Matt Rule and others, Phil Snow, the defensive players, they lost some of their swag. They weren't in the right headspace in those games, which is unfathomable that it could happen, in part because your quarterback got hurt, doesn't play defense. So I don't know. I don't know that I even want to believe that that's true.
I also don't know if like Dylan's presence in the, somebody
Dylan was inspiring to me on
my radio show yesterday, and they were like, yeah, well, if Dylan is in those games, maybe they win. I'm like, I don't know. I think they needed, some dynamic ability in those games to be able to, keep possession of the ball and keep running the ball. I don't know. I didn't get the sense the offense was a whole lot better with Dylan compared to with TJ, so like, I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways it could have gone. And this is the way it went.
I think you'd be looking at an 8-win team if he had stayed healthy versus a 7-win team. Probably in that scenario, it doesn't make the difference on whether he's here next season or not, but it's interesting to think about it. And it led me in the direction of another hypothetical. And I want to spend a couple of minutes on this. What if Dylan Raiola had never come to Nebraska? Let's entertain that possibility. If he had not flipped from Georgia in December of 2023, and this is not intended to slight Dylan Raiola, but the fact is he's leaving now after 2 years. Nebraska's in a tight spot at this moment at quarterback. might Nebraska be in a better position right now, today, in December of 2025, if this whole thing had not happened and there had not been the 5-star quarterback brought in to uplift the entire program 2 years ago, and Nebraska under Matt Rule was just allowed to progress in a more natural type of way? Where do you think Nebraska would be today? What would the last 2 years have looked like without Dylan Raiola?
Well, I agree with the premise. I don't know where they would be, but I do agree with the idea that Nebraska would be in a more organically comfortable position at the moment. I do think that. I think a lot of things changed when you got Dylan Raiola, both offensively, and it's been up and down and all those different things. But maybe Dana Holgorsen's not here if that's the case. So like I'm not sure about the details, but I do think Nebraska sort of, gave up a lot and changed a lot when they realized that Dylan Raiola was going to be their quarterback, not only from a football perspective, but also from like how people view the program perspective. I think Nebraska would be a quieter program over the last couple of years. I think that fits Matt Rule a little bit more. And I think they got off track and Dylan Raiola's presence was a little bit of was certainly a part of that over the last couple of years. Where would they be? That's a great question, because I still don't know where they're going. I don't know if Matt Rule is the guy to, bring this thing to the next level. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the case yet. So I don't have any idea where they're going still at this point.
Of course, I don't know where they would be, but here's I gave it a little bit of thought. So I think Kyle McCord would have been the quarterback in 2024. And that's easy to say because he's the quarterback who was visiting Lincoln at the time that the whole Raiola flip started to materialize, and it blew up his possibility of coming to Nebraska as a senior. Instead, he went to Syracuse and had a prolific passing season. So Kyle McCord as a senior with 1 year probably gives you more in terms of production last season. If you're Nebraska, who knows what receivers Nebraska might have not gathered out of the portal. Probably don't have Dane Key, probably don't have Isaiah Hunter. The roster looks a little bit different without Dylan Raiola. He definitely impacted the ability for Nebraska to recruit. Maybe you don't get Trey Taylor, which is still down the road, but Taylor has been vocal on social media that Dylan Raiola played a big role in his reason for picking Nebraska as a recruit. He saw that a 5-star guy could do it. Dylan paved a path for Trey Taylor to come to Nebraska. So I will say this in somewhat of a humorous light. And it's a prediction that's a hypothetical, and you never could even imagine like how things would play out. But what I'll say is, if Dylan Raiola had not come to Nebraska in December of 2023, I think he'd be in the portal right now, because he wouldn't have played yet at Georgia with Gunnar Stockton there, and Nebraska might be recruiting him out of the transfer portal for 2026. Along with signing his brother Dayton Raiola, you might be getting a 2-year backup at Georgia to come in and quarterback your team with Dylan on a bounce back.
Interesting, yeah. They'd be in a better position too. I think Dylan would be in a better position to do that, and I think Nebraska would be in a better position as well to sort of have him operating the reins of the offense. Yeah. So that's sort of a fascinating perspective. Maybe he did it the wrong way, wherever he ends up, we'll see, but maybe he reversed the order.
I don't know. Would Nebraska have, I think there's a decent chance Nebraska would have still made a bowl game in 24 if McCord was the guy leading the show. Would it have won more than 14 games over the past 2 years? It's hard to say who the quarterback would have been in 25. Nebraska probably would have had to go to the portal this year and get another quarterback, kind of a Band-Aid situation. You start living in that spot where you get a new quarterback out of the portal every year. That would have been 3 years in a row for Matt Rule, because he famously got Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech in his first season. And then if it was McCord or somebody else, maybe it's Sam Leavitt from the portal last season. Now, Leavitt had multiple years of eligibility. McCord just had one. So, it's who knows, but interesting to ponder all of the possibilities.
How is the offensive line taking to their new coach? We had a representative from that position group come up yesterday, and we'll get to that after this.
All right, I want to talk to you for a minute about Omaha Steaks. It's the holiday season, and the holidays always feel easier when you already know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks sometimes makes that too simple, whether you're treating yourself this season, that's an interesting gift, or sending something memorable to family and friends. Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection, and it can come right to your door. This week is the best time to jump in because the cyber sale continues. The deals are huge. I've given Omaha Steaks as a gift before. The reaction is always the same. It's excitement when the box arrives, even bigger smiles when everything hits the grill. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks with rich flavor, meals that make hosting or just weeknight cooking all that much easier. The variety is underrated. You get steaks, burgers, sides, desserts, comfort meals. It's one of those gifts that truly fits anyone. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and earn an extra 20% on select favorites right now. For an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Welcome back. Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. We will have a mailbag this week on Friday. As usual, get your questions in, holiday themed, transfer portal themed, quarterback themed. Maybe you want to talk about the new coaches on Nebraska's staff. Some new faces, Connor, at the podium on Tuesday. We heard from Isaiah Mosey. I was impressed with his persona. Like didn't look or sound like a freshman up there at the podium. Kind of reminds you of one of the young players in the program that Nebraska feels very, very good about moving forward in his career. And he said that he's all in at running back. He's switched back and forth a bit this year between receiver and running back based on what Nebraska's needs were and how injuries affected things. But he intends to be a running back moving ahead in the system. Heard from Mekhi Nelson. We heard from Elijah Pritchett, the left tackle, who seemingly is also coming back at Nebraska next year as a senior. And then Tyler Knaak, to me, was probably the most interesting player to go in front of the microphone. He's now Nebraska's top right guard with Rocco Spindler done at Nebraska. Rocco needed surgery to fix that finger that he disgustingly messed up against Minnesota in October. So Knaak played tackle and guard this year. He projects as a starter in some way in his senior season next year. He's also a transfer from Utah, Nebraska's opponent in the Las Vegas Bowl, and knows a thing or two about the Utes. So lots to get into with Mr. Knaak.
Yeah, let's hear from him a little bit as Tyler Knaak. By the way, I think this is, he's talked before, but this is my first time like seeing him and hearing him. He's got quite the presence. Here's Tyler Knaak yesterday.
We love Jeep. Jeep's an amazing coach. He has great energy, brings some great swagger to the room. We're all going to miss Coach Raiola. He did an amazing thing for us. I mean, me personally, he brought me out of a place that I didn't know I was going to be put into, and did a lot in my own life that I could be more grateful for. And I really hope that he finds that next job wherever it may be. But bringing Jeep in has been a great addition to the unit. Also bringing in Coach Lonnie as well. We've been two amazing hires that have really influenced a lot of good energy into the room. Different coaching style, different coaching techniques, so it's been fun to learn it. Meeting room's a bit different, practice a bit different, but it's been fun.
Have you seen the movie The Green Mile?
Yes, I have. Yes.
If Nebraska wants to reenact that as like a team building exercise in the offseason, they can have Tyler Knaak play the main character who is portrayed by Michael Clark Duncan in the movie.
I was thinking that Jeep, the company, could take the first couple words there and just put it on repeat. We love Jeep.
We love Jeep.
We love Jeep. We love Jeep. I love Jeep. I love
NIL deal for Tyler Knaak with Jeep.
We love Jeep.
The automotive company. He's of course talking about Jeep Wade, the new offensive line coach for Nebraska from Georgia Tech, who just came in. This is like Dana Holgorsen style. Came in from the outside, coaching another team here in 2025, and they said, "Here you go, Jeep. Here's the Nebraska offensive line. Coach them up. Bowl games coming up at the end of the month." You also heard Knaak talk about Lonnie, and that is Lonnie Teasley, the former South Carolina offensive line coach, who is officially in, and he's not been announced by Nebraska, but he's in working with the Huskers this month. You can expect that is a done deal, and he'll be part of the coaching staff moving forward. So I don't know if this is like a Milt Tenneper, Dan Young kind of dynamic where you kind of had two offensive line coaches. So I did ask Tyler about that, and he'd made clear like it's Jeep's show. Jeep's the O-line coach. He's in charge. Teasley is there to assist. He's been working with the interior linemen, and this is good. And this is something I think that Nebraska fans can feel good about in moving toward next season with the offensive line. The area that Jeep Wade specializes in, or what he's spending most of his time doing here at the beginning, in addition to just like being in charge of the offensive line, he's working with the tackles. So that is much needed for Nebraska to have an offensive line coach who is most comfortable being out at that position. That's often that's scrutinized the most on the O-line, and maybe the most on the entire offense aside from the QB spot.
Yeah, well, Nebraska hasn't been able to figure that out in several years. So maybe you get a quote unquote expert in there and make it work. But I find it interesting, how these new coaches are here and there's probably some different teaching methods and stuff like that going on. And Knaak touched on that yesterday. And then we have this random bowl game in 2 weeks from today. And then the group changes, right? People are going to go into the portal and people are going to come in from the portal. And, I just, the bowl practices are good and everything. And it's good to, be around and meet everybody. But I wonder how much of the base is really getting laid over these 3 weeks here.
I don't know if you heard Troy Dannon on his monthly radio show on the Huskers radio network on Tuesday night, but he talked a lot about the business side of college sports. And they had Jonathan Bateman, Nebraska's director of all things NIL, on also with Kyle Crooks to go over the movement of Nebraska's third-party NIL from 1890 to inside the athletic department. They talked about the $8 million contribution that Playfly has redirected to allow Nebraska to sit over the rev share cap. And at the end of it, Dannon mentioned that the calendar is all messed up. And we've talked about this. Holgorsen was asked about this on Tuesday, and he said as a head coach, he hated the idea of the spring portal. And then Dannon said, well, most people are in favor of a spring portal. And we've heard Matt Rule somewhat endorse a spring portal. And then Dannon kind of went down the road of saying, we got to look at spring practice. Maybe it shouldn't be spring practice. And the first thing that we have to do in college athletics is figure out when the portal best fits. It doesn't really fit anywhere, but it would make sense to have it at the start of the fiscal year, which runs July 1st to June 30th, or at the end of the fiscal year, I suppose you could say.
Wow.
There is not even like harmony and togetherness about when the portal should occur and what the calendar should look like within the Nebraska football structure, let alone within all of college sports. But this placement of the bowl game right before the portal and all this stuff you talked about, it's nuts.
Yeah, there's no way you could put it that obviously benefits anyone. There's going to be problems with every single every single place you put it, every time. And that tells you that the portal is stupid. That the whole thing is stupid. But these are the cards.
Inevitable, though.
Yeah, exactly. These are the
Can't
cards
get rid of it.
dealt at this point. You can't get rid of it. And so you just have to do the best you can. And there is plenty of disagreement on even what that looks like. So yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah. All right, let's finish it there. We've got plenty more to talk about on Thursday, and we'll be back Friday with the mailbag. If you got questions for us, and you should, get them to us on email at lockedonneb@gmail.com. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe. Follow Locked On Nebraska to get all the latest episodes on social media and everywhere else you can find the show, audio, YouTube, all of that. You know where to go. And if Locked On made your Spotify wrap this year, prove it on social media. Tag the Locked On Podcast Network on any social platform. They will drop you a code to get access to the brand new Everydayer Club, ad-free episodes, and all of that. For those of you on video, we're going to send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On College Football. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Wednesday.